Today I'm going to be showing you my deck tech video for the CC deck that I'll be taking to Worlds. As you can imagine from all the way here, it's going to be Oldhim that we're going to be playing CC. But this isn't your grandfather's Oldhim. No, this guy is not fatigue at all, but instead very aggressive. Kind of want to just kind of go over the deck and kind of show what I'm going to be bringing to Worlds and the reason why. There'll be a link to this deck as well as this video will be linked with this deck. So here's a little reasoning on why I play Mr. Oldhim and why I have it the way it is. So first off, we got our Sledge Winners Will. Nothing real spicy about that. Sledges for the Guardian matchups. I think I also bring it against Kano. For the most part, it's Winter as well. Crater Fist never comes out unless against Icelander or Kano with no one gloves. Crown of Seeds is always the hat. Don't ever worry about moving that. Field of Spring Tunic is a very, very good card in this, and it's not because it can give us a free crown. Although that is always, that's always preferred. That's always really nice. But I'll get into why it's very good in this deck later. We got Heart of Ice for our Wizard matchups, but as well as Dash and any hero that looks to really de-react us quite a bit. It really helps put attacks on that, so that's always nice. Ironhide Legs just kind of works out when you're doing Crown, Rampart, No Rim Boots, No Rim Gloves. Got Rampart, Ram's Head. If we want to play a little defensive, which this set can do, we can play Rampart. But if we want to play the way that we normally play, we're going to be playing Stalagmite. Okay, so that's all the equipment. So now let's just go down. And I think first and foremost, what you can see is this little column here. It's our Frostfangs. There's decks that run red Frostfangs, but there's not really decks that run all the rainbow Frostfangs. So let's just give them what the Frostfang is. As you can see here, hits a hero, they discard a card unless they pay 2. So it's a bit of a pummel. It only costs 2, and it comes in for 5. It does only block 2, but we make that work regardless. So coming in 2 for 5 is really, really good. That's just good value. On top of that, having the on-hit effect is what really makes this card very good. So when making this deck here, I really looked at what the meta was, and the meta right now is very much Fi dominated. Fi is one of the easiest heroes and probably going to be the most popular hero for Worlds. So I plan to see quite a bit of Fi. And because of that, I wanted a deck that can beat Fi in a very consistent manner. The other deck that I was seeing more of, especially after US Nats, was Icelander. In particular, the Wounded Bull type. I like to call it Bully Icelander. That Icelander is very good against Oldhims that are more the just like the big attack type Oldhims with Glacial Footsteps red and Thunderquake red. That is a very good deck against them. So I was having a very hard time beating that Icelander, and I was trying to figure out what I can do to change Oldhim to be able to even the odds there, as well as keep my Fi matchups very good. And I think I found it here. So that's really what Frostfang brings to the table. So let me just kind of go over that real quick. So Frostfang costing only 2 is a cheap attack. And we really like cheap attacks with this deck. That's why we also run Crush the Weak and CNC. These are our cheap attacks. We really like them because what they allow us to do is only have to pay 1 card to play them out. So if I'm against Icelander, I only need 1 card and a Frostfang to play it. Easy said, done. But something else that you might have noticed by now is that I'm also running Rainbow Pummels. Alright? The reason for Rainbow Pummel is because I honestly feel that the pummel taxing effect of taking a card that if it hits the defending player discards a card, that ability is just so freaking good. Now imagine coming in for Frostfang, they let it hit because they only want to get rid of 1 card out of their hand, and then it gets pummeled on top of that because pummel does say if it costs 2 or greater, and Frostfang costs 2. So you can pummel this Frostfang. So all of a sudden, it was 5 damage, now it's 9 damage, and now you gotta discard a card or pay 2 and discard a card. Like, it's pretty insane right now. So they go from taking no cards out, or 1 card out of hand, to 2 cards out of the hand. And on top of that, let's say they full block out Frostfang, so they block with 2 cards, and then I pummel it. Now they have no cards in hand. And that's kind of really the point, especially against Fi and Icelander, is you really want them to have no cards in hand. Obviously with Icelander, you really want no cards in arsenal. And the best way to do that is to take away a card from hand. So that is really what this deck prefaces, or is prefaced on. As well as the on-hit effects of both Pummel and Frostfang make Fi blocking more necessary. And Fi doesn't really like to block at all. So you put Fi in a very weird position, and then on top of that, you keep Icelander on their toes. So that's really what this deck brings that is so unique. But let's just go over some of the other pieces, and just to kind of go over how this deck operates. So Chokeslam here, really for the Briar matchups, very, very good against the Briar matchup. I do red and blue, just because even the blue coming in when they have a Channel Mount Rogue demands at least 1 card out of their hand. Now the other thing I really like about Chokeslam, which is the same reason why I like it about Endless Winter, is that you pitch 2 blues and you can play a Chokeslam that costs 4, and if you pitch 2 blues you have 2 floating, and as you might know, Pummel only costs 2. So basically, if you have a Pummel in hand or an arsenal and 2 blues, I mean, you got this little combo going for you. You're gonna get a big damage in. So that's what Choke stands for. CNC, we all know it. It's a very, very good card. CNC with Pummel is the best combo for a Guardian Mirror, basically making it where they cannot use D-Reacts. CNC often kills D-Reacts that are in the arsenal, especially if paired with a Pummel. And when you have 8 Pummels, it's not too hard to put a CNC in the arsenal and just kind of wait for a Pummel to come by. Traditionally, Oldhim plays just the red Pummels, maybe some of the blues, but when you're running this many Pummels, you're going to be seeing them quite often, and it's not very hard at all to get the CNC Pummel combo. That's what the mirror match kind of comes down to, is you kind of pitch stack to try to get that together. Well, this deck, you don't really have to pitch stack all too much. It can easily just kind of naturally come together. So CNC is obviously a must-have. Crush the Weak is just a very good card against Fi. On top of that, it's pretty cheap. It costs 3 for 7. That's just good value. As Icelander, she likes 3 for 7s. The Crush effect really only messes with Fi. It can mess with a few other heroes, like maybe Viserai, especially now that they're doing more Belittle package. Maybe Katsu. But mostly it's a 3 for 7 that blocks for 3. So, despite the Crush effect only really having good against like ninjas, we'll still play it into matchups like Icelander or Kano, where it's just a cheap attack that comes in big. And that's always nice. As well as Oldhim. You play it in the mirror because, again, you can block with 2 cards and then come in for 7 instead of coming in for 6 with the Sledge. So that's that. Endless Winter, I used to run 3. That might go back to being 3. Right now it's just 2. I really like Endless Winter. I think it's a very underrated card. I feel like it should get more love. But there's so much text on it. And basically, if you are able to Ice Fuse it, however many cards they use to block it, even if it's equipment, they get a Frostbite. And then if it hits, anytime they activate ability, they get a Frostbite. So this is very, very good against Dash. This is very good against Dromai. And this is actually good against Fi, believe it or not. You can't activate the Fi ability. You can't activate the sword. It's just overall very good. So I'm very happy with the card. It's one of those where it only costs 4, so it could get a Pummel fairly easy if you have 2 blues. It's not in all matchups though. This is a card that doesn't always make it into the main board. Alright, so let's move down. Here's our D-Reacts. All of our D-Reacts are sideboarded. We don't really want to play the D-Reacts in the main board. We're really not trying to block. I will bring in the staunch responses in the mirror match. I'll bring it in if the matchup says to block. A few matchups that say to block is like Dorinthia. You're gonna try to block them out. Lexi, you're gonna try to block them out. You can try to block out Dat. No, you really do have to come in with Dash. So it's really for the Rangers and the mirror match and Dorinthia. As many D-Reacts you can against Dorinthia. So it's just decks that you're really just kind of just using the D-Reacts and the Rampart. And you're just, surviving and just wearing them down. So even though this deck is very aggro, because it has these D-Reacts and the ability to run Rampart, it can be fatigue. Just don't make that the main playstyle. Definitely go more aggro, but sometimes you have to. Spinal Crush, obviously just a very good card. A little pricey, but a very good effect. So that's in there. Cranial Crush, 6 for 8. Okay. The effect plays big in some decks and not so in other decks. I find it's actually pretty huge into Reinhardt, which can be a tough matchup. But sometimes 6 for 8 is what you need. The other thing to really consider is that Dromai can be a tough matchup if you're not prepared. And so you really do need to have a lot of 6 power or more. And Cranial Crush has 8 power here. So you really want to try to keep your popper count up, which is how many cards you have that can pop Phantasm. And so Cranial Crush does check that mark. It's blue. It's just a solid card. Same with Glacial Footsteps. Sometimes you go first. Maybe you confuse this son of a gun. Blizzard, right now I have 2. I think that's where I'm going to be staying at. I could possibly go up to 3. Who knows? But right now I'm at 2. It's a very good card. If anything, it can be Ice Direct. I tend to keep Blizzard in, even if it's going against the mirror, where it's not very good at. Because you want to try to keep your blue count up, because this deck does run a good amount of red. And so you want to be able to not have your hand of 4 reds. You really want to try to minimize that risk. Channel Lake Frigid, much easier to keep around 2 turns with this deck because of the Frostfangs. You can just kind of work with those with Channel Lake Frigid. So I'm very happy with this card. It's one of the best cards. Obviously every Oldhim is playing it. Disable, a taxing effect, so that's what we want. Technically Cranial Crushes too, but Disable is kind of like a big Command and Conquer, but a worse Command and Conquer, but it's blue and it's a popper, so that's why we like it. All right, moving on. Winter's Bite. So this is traditionally an Oldhim card, just because it's an ice card that has an effect that you can play. But in this deck, as I was mentioning before, like Frostfang and Pummel just take a hand away. Sometimes what you get is you get a hand like Winter's Bite, Winter's Grass, I don't know, and just like 2 choke slams or staunch response choke slam that are all blue. That's not a great hand. You can come in for choke slam, but if it's something like you're going against, I don't know, Icelander, it's not that great of a hand. Sometimes Winter's Bite is just very good to be able just to play, and sometimes you're given that option. So I do actually like Winter's Bite here. I used to have it at 2, but I'm actually quite okay with it being at 3. Winter's Grass is just an ice card that you can use to ice direct, which is going on quite a bit in this deck, I should say. You should definitely still look to ice react. But this also blocks for 3, and that's why we keep it around. Macho Grande, Popper, that's blue with Dominate, so we like that. Terra Sunder, that has been a new addition. As you can tell by now, there is no Earth cards, and so there's no Oak and Old. So that did make room for Terra Sunder. I've seen Terra Sunder work a few times, not a ton, so it is possibly on the chopping block, but it does help when you have stuff like Crush to Wheat that only costs 3 that you can add it to. Also, Terra Sunder into your hammer can sometimes be very good, so that is why we keep the card. And then Thunderquake is probably our worst card in our deck, but again, it's blue, it blocks for 3, and it's a popper. so that's why we keep it. I will say this: never heave Thunderquake. You can't move it with Crown, and you might come to regret ever putting it in your arsenal heaved. So there's all the cards. I told you I'd come back to why Spring Tunic is very good in this deck, and so let's kind of set up that scenario here. All right. And then what was this? 1, 2, 3. Let's go 4, 5. Okay. So let's say we have Pummel in our hand, or I'm sorry, Pummel in the arsenal. Actually, let's say we have Frostfang in the arsenal, and these cards are in our hand. Okay, and Tunic is on 3. So they come in. Let's say it's the mirror match. Oldhim comes in with the sledge, right? Typical, right? Comes in for 6. Okay. Well, I'll use these 2 cards to block the 6. Okay. Now it's my turn. I could come in with a sledge. You know, I can pitch this blue and pitch this red, go with the sledge, but I have this opportunity here because Tunic's on 3 in this scenario. I can pitch the blizzard, which will keep me with 1 resource floating to when I play Frostfang. So I have 1 resource floating with Frostfang. And so Frostfang, you know, coming in for 5. Let's say he puts 6 in front of it, 2 cards in front of it, right? I only have 1 floating, but now I use Tunic resource. So use that resource, and I still have, now I have 2 floating, and now I can pummel. So the beauty about Tunic here is that it allows your Frostfang and pummels, or your Crush the Weaken, or your Command Conquer and pummels, to only need 1 blue card. So you just need 1 blue card to play Command Conquer and pummel when this is on 3, and that is what's really, really cool. And that is why that is what Tunic's used for, more than just like using it to do a Crown of Streets for free. You definitely more use it for the pummels in this deck. Okay, I mean that's basically it. I might post up some videos. I wish I'm having trouble signing into February, so I wish I could like show you some data to kind of back up how good the deck is into what matchups. But I do have a whole guide with this. I wrote it all out. So there's a guide for each hero you're facing and what to wear for armor and what to bring in. So just go ahead and take a look at that, and I hope this deck does quite well for you. It should do very well if you're going against 5 decks. But yeah, feel free to leave a comment, and thanks for watching, guys.